The merger issue, which I've touched on, is very important in my view. We've set down in the white paper, again, a drive that says we want you to look at this very seriously on a voluntary basis. And if 2 chief constables, 2 chief police authority boards and the local public in the area have some consent, we're very keen to encourage that merger proposal to save resources and to encourage closer cooperation. And in fact, we've put in place a small fund of money now to help support potential mergers and some of the costs in mergers from April of next year if forces wish to bid for that, to help them through some of the initial costs of starting up of mergers. There are 1 or 2 forces well known to you undoubtedly that are considering this, and we want to encourage that still further. And we're giving in the white paper help with council tax, which is one of the big stoppers of mergers when there's a high council tax and a low council tax merging together, to ensure that we look at those issues in a clear way. And over the next few years we'll be able to have a longer period for help and support to council tax to make sure that we help those mergers in that way. We've set out in the white paper an approach to the policing of protests, and we want to, over the next 9 months, formalise guidance on what we expect of the policing of protests generally. And I've asked ACPO and the APA to look at these issues very seriously for us. And that means really setting out the expectations of what the police can do, the expectations of what protesters should do, and the expectations of what the public should have in areas like this where protests very often happen. And one of the key things within that will be a statutory guidance published by this time next year, which will set out exactly what we expect and will, following the report last week, look at the tactics used in policing of protests to make sure that when forces such as Greater London and the Met here deal with protests and draw in forces from Kent and Essex and from other adjacent forces, that they use the same protest tactics. We understand what those tactics are, and that we understand in a very positive way how police can do that. We want to take on board Jan's report, as I've said. We've accepted initially 13 of Jan's recommendations on bureaucracy, and we're going to work with Jan over the next year to look at the further 22 recommendations that we think need looking through. Because again, I want to make sure that the police are free to deal with some issues without having to worry about bureaucracy and about some of the key issues that Jan has focused on. And from my perspective, I've got to try and save even more time and even more effort. And that's why, again, the conference Intelligent Customer Contact is very important, because I want to look at how in the next 12 months, if I'm given the chance post the election to do so, how we can help reduce still further some of those key issues that are dragging down police officers and allowing you to have much more flexibility on the ground, as we do through the Quest programme currently. The shortened stop and account form, for example, alone has saved 700,000 hours of police time this year alone, just by shortening one form. 700,000 hours of police time that can be used somewhere else. We have to be sharp, focused, and really look at all those issues, and the suggestions that you might have as a group are equally important with Jan's work to make sure that we take out unnecessary information. We don't put burdens on you centrally for information that no one ever looks at, and we don't have a situation whereby police officers get frustrated because they're not actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is detect crime and support assurance in the community. Other key issues which are very important is the national procurement process. I just think it's been bonkers, and I've thought this for a long time, that we have 43 forces, and very often we still have, despite excellent work being done in very large number of regions, 43 procurements of 43 types of equipment to do. We've said in the white paper, ain't going to happen anymore. Simple as that. So those people who are providing this equipment need to sharpen up their act to make sure they're providing at a competitive price. And forces need to collaborate to make sure we put pressure on to save money in the system while delivering a better service for the public. So straight away, we've listed in the white paper new vehicles, a deadline and a time to make sure we procure vehicles on a national basis. Body armour, national basis. Single uniform, national basis. Air support, national basis. No argument, no discussion, no sort of tiptoeing around this. Clear guidance. We're going to do this nationally, and we're going to do it nationally over the next 2 to 3 years, and we're going to save £500 million of your money as taxpayers, as well as my money as the Minister, on doing this. Money which can be ploughed into protecting frontline services at a time when we may face some challenges across the board on these issues. Those economies of scale can save millions and are certainly economies that I'm going to be pushing very hard from the centre for the future. That goes also for the issues I've touched on already in relation to HR, financial support, back office support. I don't want to be the chief constable of any particular force. I don't want to be in charge of all these issues, but I do want to drive the agenda that says through ACPO, through the Policing Improvement Agency and through the APA that we're going to make those changes to deliver better efficiencies on the ground, because we have to, and actually, irrespective of any financial difficulties, it makes common sense to do so. We're also putting a real pressure on issues to do with overtime, which is going to be difficult. We're going to face some tensions there. We've said it before, we mean it and we're going to do it. And we've set a target this year of around £75 million in terms of savings on overtime for next year. And that's going to be a real challenge for us. In fact, the target for next year is going to be £100 million, not 75, in fact, it's £100 million for next year.